In the next 10 minutes, we'll reveal the surprising truth behind why having too many choices is making you unhappy. You'll also master 12 powerful idioms and expressions to elevate your English conversations.
Talk English Podcast.
English podcast for learning English.
Hello, and welcome to Mindful Musings, the podcast where we unpack the complexities of the human experience. I'm your host, John, and today we're delving into a topic that, paradoxically, has a profound impact on our well-being in an age of seemingly endless options. We're talking about the paradox of choice. To help us navigate this fascinating subject, I'm thrilled to welcome our guest today, a behavioral scientist and author, Lily. Lily, thanks so much for joining us.
It's an absolute pleasure, John. I've been a long-time listener, and I'm genuinely excited to be here to explore this concept with you.
The feeling is mutual. Now let's get right into it. The term paradox of choice was popularized by psychologist Barry Schwartz. At its core, it suggests that while we intuitively believe more options lead to greater freedom and happiness, they often lead to the opposite: anxiety, indecision, and a feeling of dissatisfaction. Lily, from your perspective, what's the foundational principle behind this?
That's a fantastic starting point. The foundational principle is that the cognitive load of evaluating an ever-increasing number of alternatives can become so overwhelming that it diminishes the utility of the options themselves. Think about it. When we have a handful of choices, our brains can efficiently compare the pros and cons. But when that number grows to dozens or hundreds, the process becomes mentally taxing. It triggers a phenomenon known as decision paralysis, where the sheer magnitude of the options leads us to make no decision at all. It's the very antithesis of the freedom we seek.
Decision paralysis, that's a perfect way to put it. I've experienced that firsthand. You stand in the cereal aisle, faced with 50 different boxes, and you just freeze up. You end up either grabbing the same box you always do, or you feel exhausted before you've even made a choice. It's not just a minor inconvenience, is it? It's a genuine psychological burden. This is where the term paradox really comes to life, isn't it? It's a statement that seems contradictory, but is in fact true.
Exactly. The paradox lies in the contradiction between our expectation and our experience. We expect that more choices will empower us, but in reality, they often disempower us. It's a subtle but crucial distinction.
This isn't just a modern-day phenomenon, but it feels particularly relevant now, doesn't it? Lily, in your research, what do you see as the key drivers of this paradox in our current society?
Well, there are several, but I'd argue the most prominent is the confluence of digital technology and social comparison. We're living in a hyper-connected world where a quick scroll through Instagram or Facebook exposes us to a curated, often idealized version of everyone else's life. We see their exotic vacations, their perfect meals, their thriving careers. This constant exposure to a seemingly infinite array of lifestyles and experiences fuels a deep sense of cognitive dissonance.
Could you elaborate on that for our listeners? What exactly is cognitive dissonance in this context?
Certainly. Cognitive dissonance is the psychological stress we feel when our beliefs or actions are inconsistent with each other. In this case, our belief might be, I'm making good life choices, but when we're bombarded with images of others seemingly making better choices, it creates an internal conflict. We feel an incongruity between our reality and the perceived reality of others. This mental friction can be incredibly taxing and can lead us to constantly second-guess ourselves, a key contributor to decision fatigue. It's a perpetual cycle of comparison and self-doubt.
It sounds like we're not just choosing between products anymore. We're choosing between lifestyles. And that makes the stakes feel so much higher. It's not just, do I want this car or that one? It's, am I making the right choices to achieve a life as fulfilling as the one I see online? This brings up a critical point about the underlying psychology.
It's a fantastic observation, John. Our brains are not hardwired to process this kind of constant high-stakes comparison. The sheer volume of information and choices we face daily goes far beyond what our ancestors had to contend with. Our ancestral brains were optimized for survival, for making quick, effective decisions with limited information. Today, we're faced with an evolutionary mismatch. The very systems that once kept us safe are now contributing to our mental stress.
Speaking of mental stress, I think it's a good time to ask our listeners a question. This conversation is meant to be a two-way street. I want to know, in your own life, where do you most feel the burden of the paradox of choice? Is it in your career, your personal life, or even in simple daily tasks? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your insights are incredibly valuable and help shape future episodes. Before we continue, I want to take a moment to ask for your support. If you're finding value in this conversation, please consider hitting the like button, subscribing to our channel, and sharing this podcast with a friend. Your support helps us continue to create meaningful content for you.
Absolutely. The feedback from listeners is what makes this a true community. Now, moving on to the consequences of this paradox. What are some of the practical, tangible effects you've observed?
I think one of the most debilitating consequences is what you mentioned earlier, decision paralysis. But beyond that, there's also the issue of buyer's remorse, or as some call it, hindsight bias. You make a choice, but because you know there were 100 other options you didn't explore, you can't help but wonder if you made the wrong choice. The what-if game begins.
That's a perfect example. Hindsight bias is a cognitive bias where we perceive past events as more predictable than they actually were. In the context of choice, it means that once we've chosen option A, we retrospectively inflate the value of option B and tell ourselves, I should have known B was the better choice. This post-decision regret can be far more painful than the initial difficulty of choosing. It's the perpetual state of being haunted by a phantom opportunity.
And that's a key distinction. It's not just regret, it's a specific kind of regret rooted in the knowledge of what you could have had. It's the price of a perceived infinite supply of options.
Precisely. It's a form of counterfactual thinking, where we imagine alternative scenarios to our reality. In a world with few options, the mind has less material to work with in constructing these counterfactuals. But in our modern world, the mental playground for what-ifs is boundless. This is also where the concept of good enough becomes so difficult. We're so accustomed to the pursuit of the best that we often overlook the merits of something that is simply good enough.
It's a constant quest for optimization. Lily, for our listeners who might be dealing with this in their own lives, particularly in the context of their relationships, what advice do you have?
That's an excellent question. The paradox of choice definitely extends into our personal lives and relationships. The constant comparison, the feeling that there might be a better partner out there, can erode the foundation of a perfectly good relationship. It's a topic of its own.
And speaking of that, I want to recommend a great resource for our listeners. If you're struggling with the idea of mutual responsibility in your relationships, I highly recommend watching the video titled The 50-50 Myth in Relationships, Mutual Responsibility. It's a fantastic discussion that addresses the dynamics of giving and taking in a partnership. It really complements our conversation today by helping you focus on the quality of your existing choices, rather than being distracted by the illusion of a better one.
That's a wonderful suggestion, John. Shifting our focus from seeking the perfect to nurturing the good is a powerful antidote to this paradox.
So, let's talk solutions. What are some practical strategies that our listeners can adopt to combat this decision fatigue and the anxiety that comes with it?
The first step is to recognize the problem. Once you're aware of it, you can begin to implement strategies. One of the most effective is the practice of mindfulness.
Mindfulness? How does that specifically apply to managing choice?
Mindfulness means being fully present in the moment and observing your thoughts and feelings without judgment. When you practice mindfulness, you train your brain to stop the incessant mental chatter about what-ifs and could-haves. You learn to recognize when you're being overwhelmed by a decision and consciously choose to focus on the present. It's about accepting that the choice you've made is the one you've made and finding a way to make it work, rather than dwelling on the alternatives. It's a proactive choice to anchor yourself in reality.
That's a fascinating application of mindfulness. I've always thought of it more for meditation, but using it to ground yourself in the face of overwhelming choice makes perfect sense. What else?
Another strategy is to develop and use heuristics.
Could you explain what a heuristic is for our audience?
Of course, a heuristic is essentially a mental shortcut or a rule of thumb. It's a simplified way of making a decision quickly and efficiently. For example, a heuristic might be, when I go to the store, I will only consider the first two brands I see on the shelf. Or, I will only spend a maximum of 10 minutes deciding what to wear. By establishing these simple rules, you drastically reduce the number of choices you have to consider, thereby conserving your mental energy. It's a deliberate act of pre-committing to a limited set of options.
That's such a powerful point. It's not about eliminating choice, but about creating intelligent boundaries for ourselves. It's a way of reclaiming our cognitive bandwidth.
Exactly. And this isn't about being lazy, it's about being smart. We have a finite amount of cognitive energy each day, and every decision, no matter how small, depletes that energy. By offloading minor decisions to pre-established heuristics, we save our mental reserves for the truly important decisions that require deep, focused thought.
That's an incredible insight. It's about strategic allocation of mental resources. For our listeners, I'd love to know, what are some of your personal heuristics or rules of thumb that help you manage daily choices? Leave your answers in the comments.
I think that's a fantastic question, John. The collective wisdom of the community can be a great resource for everyone.
I also want to remind everyone that we have a free PDF version of this podcast available for download in the description. It includes a comprehensive vocabulary list, a grammar review, and a quick quiz to test your understanding of today's discussion. It's a great way to solidify what you've learned.
Well, friends, it's time to learn some new words and phrases.
Paradox, a seemingly absurd or self-contradictory statement or proposition that when investigated or explained may prove to be well-founded or true. Example, the paradox of the situation was that the more choices we had, the less happy we became.
Decision paralysis, the state of being unable to make a choice or decision due to an overwhelming number of options. Example, faced with a huge menu, I experienced decision paralysis and couldn't order anything.
Antithesis, a person or thing that is the direct opposite of something else. Example, the simplicity of his life was the antithesis of the consumer culture he critiqued.
Confluence, the act or process of merging, a coming together of people or things. Example, the confluence of digital technology and social media has created a new set of psychological challenges.
Cognitive dissonance, the state of having inconsistent thoughts, beliefs, or attitudes, especially as relating to behavioral decisions and attitude change. Example, she felt a strong sense of cognitive dissonance after buying the expensive shoes, knowing she was trying to save money.
Counterfactual thinking, a psychological concept involving a human tendency to create possible alternatives to life events that have already occurred, something that is contrary to what actually happened. Example, after losing the match, his mind was full of counterfactual thinking, replaying what he could have done differently.
Hindsight bias, the tendency to perceive past events as having been more predictable than they actually were. Example, my dad's comment, "I knew the stock would go down," was a classic case of hindsight bias.
Mindfulness, the quality or state of being conscious or aware of something, a mental state achieved by focusing one's awareness on the present moment while calmly acknowledging and accepting one's feelings, thoughts, and bodily sensations. Example, practicing mindfulness can help you appreciate the present moment and reduce anxiety.
Heuristics, mental shortcuts or rules of thumb that help us make decisions and judgments quickly and efficiently. Example, using simple heuristics can save a lot of time when you're shopping for groceries.
Cognitive load, the total amount of mental effort being used in the working memory. Example, the complex problem created a significant cognitive load for the student.
Evolutionary mismatch, a concept in evolutionary biology that refers to the idea that some human traits were once useful for survival but are now not well suited to our modern environment. Example, our love for sugar is an evolutionary mismatch in a world where it's abundant and cheap.
Proactive, creating or controlling a situation rather than just responding to it after it has happened. Example, instead of waiting for a problem to arise, he took a proactive approach and planned ahead. It's an excellent resource. Now, before we wrap up, what final thoughts do you have, John?
I think what we've learned today is that true freedom isn't found in having an unlimited number of choices, but rather in the ability to choose what truly matters. By understanding the paradox of choice and implementing strategies like mindfulness and heuristics, we can reclaim our peace of mind and live more intentional, fulfilling lives.
A perfect summation. It's about shifting from an external focus on an endless menu of options to an internal focus on what truly brings us value and purpose.
It's been an incredible conversation, Lily. Thank you so much for your time and your invaluable insights.
My pleasure, John. It was a wonderful discussion.
We've covered a lot today, from the cognitive burden of endless options to practical strategies for managing decision fatigue. I want to give a final shout out to our incredible audience. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support is what makes this show possible. For those of you who want to continue this journey of self-improvement, and managing life's challenges, I recommend you watch another video we have on our channel titled, How to Overcome the Fear of Change. It's a powerful companion to today's episode, as it tackles a related issue that many of us face. And just one last reminder, the free PDF of this episode, with all the vocabulary, grammar, and a quiz, is available for you to download. Just check the link in the description. Thank you all again for joining us. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Mindful Musings. Goodbye for now.